I'd like to introduce you to our third team. The bar has remained. Don't you say? Don't you think? We have a nice bar going. So now I'd like to introduce you to Team LIBRAS, and they will now be giving you their exciting presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, LIBRAS.
Good afternoon, everyone. We are Team LIBRAS. I am Caroline Seatman from Dominican University, and my teammates on my left are Amy Widener from Benedictine University, Amy Walker from North Central College, Julie Robluski, also from Benedictine University, and Andy Meyer from North Park University. And our wonderful mentor was Rich Darga from Chicago State. He's in the audience. So Constellation, which you may have heard us talking a lot about, is the name of our institutional repository, or IR. It's an online open access collection of a university's scholarly output, and it, like thousands of other IRs around the world, includes faculty scholarship like journal articles, preprints and postprints, student scholarship like theses and dissertations, conference and symposium proceedings, and numerous other items showcasing the research, history, and service projects of the institution. And Constellation is used by the libraries in the LIBRAS consortium of liberal arts schools in the Chicago area, and all of our institutions are part of that consortium. It uses the DSpace open source software, and it currently resides at Dominican, and I'm the central administrator, but I need help. There are faults in our Constellation. So at its inception several years ago, it really made sense to house it at Dominican, and the two very early adopters were totally okay with it living there and having all the features and functions have to be done at Dominican. But now with 5 early adopters, that needs to change. So it has never been more important. I need my teammates to bring Constellation to a place in which it is functional, marketable, and sustainable. It will never not be important, not only for us, but for all 17 libraries in the LIBRAS consortium.
Hi. Benedictine University tried to launch Constellation 2 years ago. With only 1 or 2 librarians partially focusing their attention on it, it became evident really quickly that we were never going to go anywhere with it. It always stayed on the back burner, and without some major undivided attention, it was never going to leave that back burner.
As the most recent adopter of Constellation at North Central College, we were grateful that we didn't have to recreate the wheel to become a part of it. But during our implementation process, we realized that maybe that wheel wasn't going to fit our car. So that was where we used this opportunity to come together and bring together a group of people that are most interested in taking a very back burner project and bringing it up to the front burner.
Throughout all of these stages, our university kept creating all of this content that needed a home where the people creating it knew that they could access it, be inspired by others' work, and use it, a place where they knew it would be well cared for and preserved into the future. The changing landscape of higher education that we were in has just kept changing, and with it, our schools, like all of the others, have felt the need to share the quality and value of the student and faculty work in a way that contributes not just to the sum of human knowledge, but maybe helps people achieve some of their educational and professional goals as well. And as an archivist, as well as a librarian, I'm always concerned about curating and preserving this institutionally created knowledge, because otherwise we end up with that digital dark age for our very own information. Also, as an archivist, we have a saying that saving without using is just hoarding, and I was pretty afraid that we were headed down that path.
And I contributed to this project by representing a school not currently using Constellation as our institutional repository. Because my library is still in the early stages of this conversation, I was able to bring a different set of questions and concerns to the project. Additionally, our team brought together a wide range of skills within the library. I work in technical services, and I rounded out a team that consists of a reference and instruction librarian, a user experience coordinator, an archivist, and a digital resources librarian. This diversity of experience helped us see our project from many different perspectives and really strengthen the end result.
So thank you to Amy and Amy for the 3D printer work. So librarians traditionally have been curators. We purchase and we keep print books and journals, and authors traditionally have given their copyrights away to publishers in order to have their work included in these print books and journals. So libraries in turn can buy back their own faculty authors' work. And then along comes the internet, a new publishing venue that gives rise to open access information, no subscription fees, free to read, download, print, and reuse. It's a radical thing, as Catherine Skinner said yesterday. She actually gave you a very good preview of what we're talking about here today. So authors no longer have to publish in these closed access venues, for which libraries have to pay increasingly outrageous prices. They don't have to give away their rights to publishers, and their work can reach farther and have a greater impact than it would have had it been locked up in those traditional print publications. And so open access publishing unlocks information, which you saw created in the 3D printer. So university librarians are makers too, and we work every day with prolific makers, such as the faculty and students at our university. So we're no longer just curators, but we are creators and publishers. And we work with those makers, those who don't have the literary agents or the other publishing outlets, think students especially here, and we publish their scholarly output in open access repositories like Constellation, so it can be shared and reused. So we fuel those upheavals in the publishing world. We disrupt the traditional, expensive, unsustainable publishing model of closed access, and we provide an open access publishing alternative, as well as other services for authors and researchers, so they understand open access and they can benefit from that alternative. And Dr. Skinner said yesterday that we librarians hope we own the published content or have the rights to publish it. Well, we work to absolutely ensure that our faculty absolutely do not sign away their rights to the publisher and that we can publish their work in Constellation. So ultimately, we create balance between publishers, authors, librarians, and researchers so that information is freed, it's accessed, it's used, and then returned to the scholarly conversation in new and different products for future research on our campuses and beyond. And so this campus maker culture can't exist without open access, and it can't exist without Constellation.
As Caroline mentioned earlier, Constellation came to be as a way for libraries that are part of the LIBRAS consortium to develop a collaborative repository for various digital and digitized collections on each of our campuses. Each of the 17 colleges and universities is a small private school, and LIBRAS was founded on the premise that we all share similar cultures and hurdles, and that we can use our collective knowledge and experiences to help each other. As small schools, one of the challenges we regularly face is that many technology solutions are designed for larger institutions that either have large budgets or dedicated technology staff for library initiatives. None of our libraries have either of these. We're used to relying on scaling down free, open source solutions and our own varying levels of technological knowledge. By developing our repository, as a consortial project, we were not only able to rely on each other for the development and marketing of the repository, but also expose our users to the kinds of projects that are happening at our sister institutions. Now that you understand more about the importance of Constellation at each of our institutions, we'd like to show you Constellation in its current form and then a prototype that we've developed that we will use to guide our work with a consulting firm that specializes in customizing for DSpace repositories. This is the landing page of Constellation. Each of the currently participating institutions is represented by a community in the system. Here's the community page for Benedictine University. Each institution is able to define the sub-communities and collections that are representative of the departments or events they would like to share through Constellation. Each institution is able to upload a logo to their community landing page, allowing for minimal institutional branding. This is an individual item page. Now, which institution does this item belong to? Since I just showed you the community page from Benedictine University, you'd probably assume it's a document from Benedictine. Actually, this is one from a collection at North Central College. The only way you would know this is to look at the breadcrumbs at the top of the page or at the bottom of the page for the collection list. When you get to the item level of a community, you entirely lose the branding. One of the biggest hurdles we've each found at our institutions is getting buy-in from the administration and faculty that we need as our strongest supporters for a repository that is supposed to belong to each of us but looks like it belongs to none of us. As with any open source software, like DSpace, many of the enhancements brought about by the actual users of the software and the hacks that they implement to make it fit their needs. We found that many of the users of DSpace want to do exactly what we do and share responsibility with sister institutions. So there are a number of features and functions in the newest version of DSpace that support just that. So now let's take a look at the prototype of the new improved Constellation. It was very important to us that we maintain a landing page where our users have the option to explore and discover across all of our institutions. Now, if we look at Benedictine University's community page, it is branded to reflect Benedictine's unique identity, utilizing the institution's logo and colors. And when we look at the record from one of their collections, we're able to maintain that level of branding. Another important feature we're able to implement is a custom metadata view. Each institution will be able to determine what metadata fields are available for input in each of their collections, and also which will be visible on the item record pages. So it can be as simple as a title and an author, or it can contain more detail, including descriptions and project contributor information. Many of our students at North Central College utilize our thesis collection in Constellation to scope out the projects a potential thesis advisor has worked on in the past. So having that kind of information front and center is very important for our collection, where that kind of information would be non-existent for a faculty symposium at Benedictine University. Even though we've begun tackling the issues surrounding the consortial repository model, it's still not without its challenges.
We knew when we started this project that we were tackling a notorious BIP, or big important problem. Institutional repositories have been tried before by many larger, more prestigious institutions than ours. I'm talking about you, Stanford, Yale, and University of Illinois. But even those institutions, although they talk about them a lot, have not solved all of the problems, and many of them are still reporting that they're facing many, many challenges as they explore this still relatively new resource to offer libraries and their patrons. Some of the things that they're struggling with, going just beyond the technology, which is really only the first part, are things like, how do you ensure that your faculty will actually submit their research? Can you mandate that? And if you do, how would you enforce that? If you're getting them to submit their items, how are you going to reassure them that it won't affect their ability to publish elsewhere or somehow degrade their research? How do you not just recruit, but also vet student submissions so that they don't raise questions about your academic quality, or even worse, academic honesty? How do you educate everyone about the value of an open access platform? Once you've built something and you've actually gotten people to submit content into it, you have to worry then about avoiding the orphan syndrome. There's the problem of the ongoing care and feeding of your repository, not just preserving the information as it is, but having it be an actual priority for people, one that has ongoing time, resources, and attention devoted to it. A lot of institutions have had strong starts only to have their institutional repositories fade into obscurity once they lost their initial founders and champions. In terms of educating faculty, staff, and students and getting their participation, once you've actually gotten their content in, you have to ensure that your repository is not a place where scholarship goes to die. We all have a list of resources that we know don't actually get used, despite the fact that we make them available and we tell people about them constantly. We wanted to envision this as a new kind of resource where you don't have just the ability to passively consume information, but to engage in reviewing it, providing feedback on the work that people were doing, and linking your ongoing work and new contributions to the work of others so that it contributes to a greater dialogue or discourse in different fields of study. Then there's still the area of how does this information get preserved for the long haul. For those of you who have sat in on the digital preservation session this time around or listened to some of the keynotes, you'll know that this is an area that really has yet to be solved. Although there are some tools available that provide some initial solutions, they're far from something that we're confident that will last for the long term. And this is something that we know that we have to keep actively monitoring, because just because it's in DSpace doesn't mean that it's actually safe forever. And no one, not even the biggest of schools, has really figured out what the future holds for electronic content like this. In addition to the scarcity of resources and understanding, because we don't have the big fancy budgets, equipment, and IT departments, we are also under pressure to justify our deployment of resources and attention to this project. We have to show how this is not just another academic database, but a resource that distinguishes the participating institutions and contributes to the recruitment and retention of students and faculty, and to the enhancement of the school's brand. It's a new thing for our schools to see libraries as assets in these areas rather than just as overhead that they have to spend money on. Finally, for all of us, although we are collaborating, we're also competitors in the market of higher education, and getting everyone to trust and buy into this shared resource as something that distinguishes us, even though we're partnering and sharing some of this information, is no small feat. As we went through our process of solving our technical problems with the Constellation problem, we certainly ran into issues. We tended to focus on our weaknesses at the beginning, what we didn't have, our different priorities coming from our different roles and our different institutional needs. We were worried a lot about the dispersed ownership. If none of us owns it, how could we ever expect anyone to really support this going forward? But then over time, we realized that, like in a good kung fu movie, our weaknesses were our strengths. By piecing our perspectives together, we realized that we were stronger, more embedded, and more robust because we had many ways of approaching this, and that made for a more robust, easily transferable solution for people beyond just our own institutions. We were small, but we were nimble. We could think of ways to do things cheap and fast, which are two criteria that most people are pretty much always interested. Because there were many of us, we held each other accountable. Because there was so much riding on this, we had to care deeply about the outcomes. And we realized that the tweak and repeat model that we had already used in the early versions of trying out Constellation was something that could become a deliverable in its own right. This could become a model that we could document and share with others so that they could creatively reuse it, either to join Constellation and figure out how to get buy-in from their administrations, faculty, staff, legal, etc., or even from other organizations that wanted to start a similar collaborative repository. They could see how we did it, take it, and do it again in their own particular situation, tweaking it as they needed and learning from all of the variations that we had tried.
So, for many of the reasons we've already named, lack of technical expertise, lack of institutional buy-in, we started this process feeling a bit like MacGyver midway through an episode, facing a difficult problem and with a lack of resources. Through the ILEAD USA experience, I've learned that many of you have felt the same way. I've also learned about how resourceful librarians have responded to these challenges. So I'm going to share 2 ways that our team responded to these challenges and embraced our inner MacGyver on this project. So like MacGyver, our team put together everyday objects to perform extraordinary and complex tasks. These everyday objects weren't rubber bands and paper clips. They were things like server space, marketing materials, technical experience, and user guides. Working across institutions, we were able to combine existing skills and materials in transformative ways. One of us had an excellent marketing materials geared towards administration and faculty. Another had great resources on scholarly communication and the open access movement. Yet another school had server space and the willingness to host Constellation. By combining these resources, we created a solution beyond the reach of any individual school. In doing so, our group embodied the principles of the hacker and makerspace movement. MacGyver would be proud. So we solved these tasks by combining strengths and experiences that already existed at our member institutions. We also solved problems by working creatively as a team to create new resources and new expertise. For example, we quickly realized that one thing we needed was a business model and a plan. Because no individual or individual institution had one of those laying around, we worked together to build one from scratch. So our project both combined existing material and created new materials. To make them available to everyone, we also created a brand new website. There it is. Thanks. So, using some of the tools, skills, and ideals we learned here at ILEAD USA, we created a fully responsive and fully accessible website that makes our materials available to everyone in our consortium and everyone with an internet connection. This website includes a Getting Started guide to provide a blueprint to help other schools get started with Constellation. It includes marketing materials for other librarians to use to create campus buy-in. This section also collects and shares success stories that we can hope to build on as we go. It also includes policies, administrative guides, lists of resources for others to use and share. So in some ways, this is our final product, but we also know this will be a work in process. We expect the site to grow and evolve over time. As you can see, we've created a set of tools and resources that librarians at other LIBRAS schools can use to build their own repositories, and we've also created a model for other organizations and other library consortium to learn from. In the end, we are very proud of the work we've done on Constellation, but we'd also be the first to admit that the end result isn't a complete, all-inclusive package.
So where do we go from here? Both the perception and the prioritization of scholarly communication has changed. It's been 4 years since Constellation first launched, and Team LIBRAS has many exciting things to share with all of you. First and most importantly, our very own Caroline Seatman. Come on, Caroline. She's changing roles at her current institution, and for the 2015-2016 academic year, she's leaving her position in reference and instruction and is becoming Dominican University's first ever scholarly communications librarian. In this role, she's going to focus on open access education and the identification and promotion of scholarly research that's created on her campus. Team LIBRAS has also reached out to CARLI, which is a statewide consortium, to pursue additional funding for this project, and we've engaged our LIBRAS consortium to finally claim this repository. We want them to call for increased participation from the communities, as well as add a budget line to make sure that this will be successful. We're also excited to announce that 2 LIBRAS institutions have already contacted us because they want to get in on the repository. St. Xavier University, which has a brand new library director, yay for us. He's ready to get his campus on board with an IR. They've agreed to be our first guinea pig, so they're going to test out all of the documents that you see in our box on our website and provide us with feedback on how we can tweak those and continue to make them better. Columbia College Chicago has also reached out to us. They currently have an active and functioning IR, but they want us to harvest their records and their metadata to upload into Constellation. And by doing that, it's going to become a portal for their school as well as for our Constellation users to their data. Not to mention, Team LIBRAS is going to be leaving ILEAD U and presenting today's material all over again on Saturday at the Associated Colleges of the Chicago Area Symposium at Elmhurst College. So. ACA is comprised of all of the LIBRAS institutions plus one more, and its attendees are going to include directors, deans, seasoned and new faculty, as well as librarians. So we couldn't ask for a greater opportunity to promote open access, scholarly research, and the Constellation repository itself. And what we're really hoping is that those people that we talk to are going to go back to their campuses and their deans and their departments and tell them that they went in on the open access movement. And then finally in spring, we're going to go and update everything and do it all over again at the LIBRAS annual meeting. So how are we making this dream a reality? Like Amy said, we're engaging a DSpace consultant to create the environment that she prototyped up and showed you. And this consultant's going to install the latest and greatest DSpace application on servers that are going to be at North Central College now instead of Dominican University. They're going to customize the code to allow for that full branding from community all the way down to the item level so that those in our communities and at our institutions feel like they have ownership of their content and it's not just on a server that belongs to no one. And then finally, they're going to provide the documentation and the support that we need to make sure that Constellation the Constellation process can be repeated for each institution as they come on board. Now we know that this repository is only going to continue to get bigger and better. We need to revisit the business plan. We know we need to revisit the administration and the various other aspects of Constellation regularly because we want to make sure that it stays alive and that it stays healthy. We also know now that working as a team across multiple campuses is going to help us to achieve success that we had previously thought was unachievable on our own. So, thank you to our institutions, to IMLS, to ILEAD U, to the Illinois State Library, and to all of you for helping us make this happen.
Knowledgeable about open access and the need to share the intellectual capital of your own institution through an IR or another open access publishing venue. And you can advertise that knowledge with one of these door hangs that are in the shape of the open access unlock. It's also what you see on our t-shirts up here. There's a bunch down by the cookies, so please take several, and a cookie and candy. So they invite people to ask you about open access, and it also invites everyone to share in Open Access Week, which happens every October. This year it was last week, but we are honored to keep the celebration going here with all of you at ILEAD U, and we will gladly take questions.
So now that you're working together at the sort of technical level, you're learning to trust each other and such, I'm wondering, do you have thoughts or plans at working at the institutional sort of display curation level? In other words, where faculty from the different departments can come together and create an open access journal from the contents of the repository from different institutions, that kind of thing.
No, that's not something we've gotten to yet, but we're kind of hoping that bringing everyone together into this repository is going to kind of spark some of these discussions, and this ACA conference that we're presenting at on Saturday, that is a lot of collaboration as well between the institutions. So we're hoping if they know that this kind of thing exists, that they'll start thinking in that model as well.
If you want to appeal to faculty, we're going to store your stuff isn't as appealing as we're going to republish your stuff with next to really cool colleagues. Great idea.
You know, Dave, Columbia College can use OAI PMH to inject it.
Your leadership is amazing and should be acknowledged by not only everyone in this room, but everyone at your institutions.
Yep.
And I think it's important for all of us to take just a moment to recognize how difficult this really was to do for you. The bureaucratic, political with a small p stuff that you had to hurdle. Just, I think you all have done some amazing, amazing work.
This is the stuff that would make Ellen Schwartz proud.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Yay!